Now, later it was theorized that nucleic acids were formed by the permutation and combination of various nitrogenous bases, phosphorus, oxygen, hydrogen, and sulfur, and this contained this is plus it had got nucleic acid in the form of DNA. And what this thing had, it also had DNA, plus it had got cytoplasm which contained stored stored nutrients, minerals, etc. From a single protocell, the five kingdom, and along with millions of individuals under the five kingdom evolved from a single protocell. Stanley and Miller, along with oparin-haldane, other scientists, they called that primitive ocean an hot dilute soup. Hot dilute soup, in which all the amino acids formed, the carbohydrates formed, the lipid formed. In fact, Stanley and Stanley, Miller, and Urey, who performed that famous experiment, they repeated their experiment in various conditions and permutation of combination of various organic molecules, and they found that along with amino acids, carbohydrates and lipids were also formed. So all those carbohydrate, lipid, protein, I should say amino acid droplets aggregated with each other, forming a colloidal drop called protobiont. Protobiont. Okay. Now this protobiont did not reproduce, as it lacked any power to reproduce. However, it grew by absorbing molecules from the surroundings. Molecules from the surroundings. Okay. And it showed simple form of metabolism. So the primitive and the first acellular life form, as it shows two important features of life, that is growth and metabolism. So we can say it is a rudimentary primitive life form, the most primitive life form. Okay, now oparin created a protobiont without a lipid coat called coacervate, and Sidney W. Fox, another scientist, created a protobiont with lipid coat, and he called it microsphere. These were created in the lab only. mimicking the ancient earth conditions of the hot dilute soup. Okay. Now, later it was theorized that nucleic acids were formed by the permutation and combination of various nitrogenous bases, phosphorus, oxygen, hydrogen, and sulfur. Okay, and these nucleic acids congregated into nucleic acid chains, and these nucleic acid chains further aggregated with amino acids forming nucleoproteins. Forming nucleoproteins. Now these nucleoproteins were engulfed by a lipid coat. Forming a protocell. This protocell could divide by fission, grow by absorbing molecules, and showed metabolism at its most simple form. So, from the protobiont we get through evolution. This is also evolution. A protocell. It has got the ability to grow like the protobiont by absorbing molecules from the surroundings. It shows simple metabolism like the protobiont. However, it has gained a new function courtesy of the nucleoproteins to divide by fusion. To divide by fission. So, division by fission is a type of vegetative reproduction. So, the first reproductive capability are seen in the protocells. So, apart from locomotion evolved much later. Okay. So, apart from locomotion, all the other three factors that are essential to classify something as living were present in the protocell, and this protocell formed the backbone of the entire living world. The protocell formed the backbone of the entire living world. Now, from this protocell, we got prokaryotes. How? From protocell slowly incorporated nucleic acids more. They formed a nucleoid, the cytoplasm developed, it became more dense. The lipid formed a membrane, and outside the lipid, protein-lipid network was formed, creating in a cell wall or capsule. Okay. So from protocell came the prokaryotes. Now, prokaryotes initially came heterotrophs, meaning they scoured the ocean for organic material, which they broke down into simpler material, and in the due process they absorb the energy released in that chemical breakdown, and they absorb the simple chemical substances produced as the result of a end product of that chemical breakdown. Later, when chlorophyll evolved, Okay, when chlorophyll evolved, before chlorophyll evolved, gradually they became from chemoheterotrophs to chemoautotrophs. They could synthesize at this phase, they could synthesize essential nutrients inside their own body with the help of the chemical energy of their surroundings. And later, when chlorophyll evolved, later at a later phase, when chlorophyll evolved, after chlorophyll evolved, okay, they became photoautotrophs, like bacteria, cyanobacteria, etc. So this is how prokaryotes came, and 1.5 billion years ago, from the prokaryotes, okay, 1.5 billion years ago, from the prokaryotes came the eukaryotes. Eukaryotes had well-defined nucleus with nuclear membrane. They had membrane-bound organelles. Okay, they had chlorophyll inside chloroplast, and they had mitochondria. It is theorized that mitochondria was a prokaryotic organism, which prokaryotic organism okay, which entered into another prokaryotic organism, a membrane bound another prokaryotic organism. Okay, through, and this mitochondria entered here inside another prokaryotic organism, and they formed a symbiotic relationship. What kind of symbiotic relationship? This thing could produce ATP, and this contained, and this has, plus it had got nucleic acid in the form of DNA. And what this thing had? It also had DNA, plus it had got cytoplasm, which contained stored nutrients, minerals, etc. So this cell provided nutrients, minerals to this organism, and this organism in return produced ATP, which was utilized by both of them. So they had entered a symbiotic relationship, and hence, as a result of this symbiotic relationship, 1.5 billion years ago, eukaryotes evolved. As a result of this symbiotic relationship, eukaryotes evolved. That is why, till this date, mitochondria has its own DNA called the mitochondrial DNA or the MP DNA, and courtesy of this mitochondrial DNA, MP, courtesy of this mitochondrial DNA, mitochondria can divide, can replicate on its own and to some extent has its own autonomous metabolism courtesy of this mitochondrial DNA, which indicates that probably a symbiotic relationship between two prokaryotic organisms, one which evolved into the mitochondria, this partner evolved into the mitochondria, and this partner was the rest of the cell, and these two formed a new kind of cell known as the eukaryotes as a result of this symbiotic relationship. Okay, so this is how from the protocell, which was formed 3 billion years ago, through the course of another 1.5 billion years, the eukaryotes formed, and from this eukaryotes we got from this prokaryotes, okay, from this prokaryotes we got kingdom Monera from this prokaryote, and from the eukaryotes we got kingdom Protista, kingdom fungi, plants, and animals. So this is how from a single protocell the 5 kingdom, and along with millions of individuals under the 5 kingdom evolved from a single protocell. Okay, so this is the history of evolution of life on Earth.